I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which I live and work, the Gundungurra land and people. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. I also want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which you, our listeners, are joining us from today. I recognise the deep connection that First Nations people have to this land, their enduring culture, and their commitment to the preservation and care for their country. This land was never ceded, and it always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Hey there, and welcome to Beyond the Surface, the podcast where we explore the stories of people who have survived religious trauma, left high control or cult communities, and are deconstructing their faith. I'm your host, Sam, and each week I'll talk with individuals who have taken the brave step to start shifting their beliefs that might have once controlled and defined their lives. Join us as we dig into their experiences, the challenges they've faced, and the insights they've gained. Whether you're on a similar journey or you're just curious about these powerful stories, you're in the right place. This is Beyond the Surface. Welcome, Scott. Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure.
I like to start these episodes by asking people where in the world you are, and I suspect there is going to be a weird clash between where you are and the voice that everybody is hearing. But where in the world are you?
I tend to skip around the planet a little bit more than the average person. So I'm right now living in Aotearoa in Otatahi, Christchurch in New Zealand.
Lovely.
And I've been based here for the last 5 months. I'll be leaving soon, but I love this place. It's been an incredible summer in the Southern Hemisphere. First time living down here, but I'm from Northern USA near the Canadian border in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm. Where are you headed to after New Zealand?
Back to my home world, actually, and I haven't lived there for 25 years.
Right.
I've visited a couple times in the last couple decades, like once every 5 or 10 years. But yeah, I'll be going back to visit family. I've a grandparent who's passed and one who's like hanging on, so just visiting.
Right. Okay.
Which ties into the story, actually. It's not just trying to be heavy.
Yes, no, absolutely. I love it. So I pretty much start all of these episodes with a very vague question, which typically lets the conversation go in, 101 different directions. But where does your story start?
Oh, wow. Okay. I would say my grandparents of note, I just mentioned joining a religious cult, for what they thought were good reasons in their retirement. And then that influencing my dad, and then influencing us as kids back in the late 80s, early 90s. And maybe when it comes down to the movie I made about indie rockers who are cult escape artists from that community. My story probably starts in being an indie rock band and playing in those spaces from a pretty young age and writing a couple albums, and then finding out that there's actually interesting and kind of cool people in the cult who are also musicians that were with like, oh, I could like lean into that part of the cult. And eventually make a movie about that.
Yes. Okay. So in case people want to go and watch it before listening to the rest of this episode about your story and want some context, what is Witness Underground?
Witness Underground is a rockumentary, has 3 parts, basically exploring a community inside of a cult through the lens of indie musicians and indie filmmakers. And then what changed that like tragically like dissolved and exploded that scene in a negative way. It was across 5 states for about 17 years, and has an incredible archive of music. They're very talented non-Christian, like secular artists in a religious cult, and then what music they made about successfully navigating cult mind control to kind of point a finger at the problem, and also this transformative life-changing experience that they went through.
Amazing. And I mean, we've thrown around the word cult. We've not actually specified who we're talking about here, but for clarity, we are talking about the Jehovah's Witness. And so I'm curious what it was like for you growing up in that environment.
Well, it started with an indoctrination course, which is real weird as a kid. Instead of like playing games or playing with my siblings or like watching TV or cartoons or Legos, which I did all of those things, but also here, wear these headphones and this, Walkman and like push play and then follow in this text only book and like try to
Mm.
answer the question. And the answer is, sentence three in every paragraph. And it's just like ongoing. Like there's someone made a piece of art in Australia, Sarah Riches. It's a beautiful piece of art. She makes tons of cool stuff, but it's like putting a cassette tape into your forehead, like your
Oh,
head's the Walkman, as like a part of to like create a piece of beautiful art that like exemplifies that moment.
yeah.
But yeah, lots of strange navigation because my mom didn't join, so we had family that were like Methodist, Lutheran, non-denominational Christian, and
Mm.
lots of friends that we had access to throughout our whole lives, me and my siblings. So we kind of had quite a balanced view. It was like, oh, this is actually the real extreme group over here, not our family. And like it's like constantly this tension of trying to have a foot in two worlds and
Mm.
not really sure what's real because everyone's saying something else, something completely conflicting is real. So in a way, it was kind of balanced way of having an being influenced by a cult, where
Mm.
most people are either like they joined it as an adult or they were raised in it from birth with like no external influences
Mm.
aside from like, the PG movies you're allowed to watch or the pop music on, top 40 hit radio that you're allowed to listen to.
Yeah. I mean, I hear you say balanced, and I go, for a kid, I'm thinking also confusing though, like to have mum believing this one thing and then dad believing this other thing, and having that sort of like very indoctrinated perspective of you have to believe this, and this is the only right thing to believe.
Yeah,
That's confusing, as well
very
as,
confusing.
balanced from, I guess, heavy indoctrination, but confusing nonetheless.
Yeah, and maybe the first set of confusion that made me really skeptical was when I was 6 and my mom's dad, not never part of that religion, but always read the Bible while smoking his pipe in the living room, kind of guy. He died, and the entire extended family was like, "Oh, he's in heaven now." And as a
Mm.
kid, you're like, "What is death?" Like a little
Yeah.
fascinated by what's real and what's not, and this whole fantasy world and people have made up or believe for whatever reasons, and then having this new religion influencing our lives, saying definitely he's not in heaven. He was a part of the wrong religion. It's like, whoa, which one is true? And then being like, every time I ever when I then I learned to pray because my dad was just being going to church for the first time ever and trying to get us like talking to this deity. And all of the prayers for like a year were like, why won't you let like my grandpa into heaven?
Yeah.
God, I want a +1 for
Yeah.
grandpa. Like, make it happen. What the hell? Like
Yeah.
with anger, like frustration that he's this unjust being
Mm.
who only likes certain people and hates everyone else.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's their main one of their main ideologies is like you have to be part of this religion, and even then, there's no guarantee because like we don't even trust each other.
Hmm. I mean, all of the confusion, but also the purity of just like a 6, 7-year-old just going like, why? Like this doesn't make any sense. Like if there's this wonderful place and we get to go there, why would he not get to go there also? Like it's both heartbreaking and also immensely pure of like the brain capacity of a 6, 7-year-old.
Yeah.
Um,
Also, like uh, existential crisis
yeah.
inducing. Like, okay, death is already enough to handle, but not knowing, like having everyone basically fight about it, fight
Yes.
about what's happening after.
Yeah.
It's a little bit too much to handle for a kid, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I have a pretty big gripe with, I guess, kids, like particularly young kids, and even, preteen, sort of early teen ages, having to make eternal life choices about like giving their life to whatever deity it is in that religion. But
Yeah.
the brain capacity and developmental stages at that point is just, you can barely see the end of the week, let alone the end of eternity. So
Right.
it's just like from a cognitive perspective, it's just not possible. And yet it's happening every day. I'm curious what it was like and whether it was a different experience for you as someone who uh, was not born in this community, but essentially was a convert to this community. And were you treated differently because of that?
Oh, actually, yeah. There's a thing like the witnesses will they'll treat new members with a classic manipulative tactic called love bombing.
Mm,
So they won't tell you all the details. They'll only bring up the positive things,
yeah.
and they'll give you like lots of leeway when you're first involved. And I think my mom was onto that pretty quickly, which is why she kind of never really joined, because like, oh, as long as you're going to treat people that way in this
Yeah.
position, I'll just stay right there in that position. Then I don't have to do all the
Hmm.
commitments, because I see these other people getting treated differently. And like, she was this kind of like by action a guide to us without ever saying like, here's how you navigate this world. It's like, just do what she's doing, like don't take it too seriously. um, which is strange. It's really quite odd. But being born in, that was your question, right? Someone who joins versus someone who's born in.
Mm,
Oh no, and then like us having this weird like middle ground. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I think my parents were also just like quite bad at it, because they were learning how to indoctrinate their kids, but like they didn't know. They never tried to do that before. They never talked about, before this religion, talked about God or spirituality or life, you know, in an afterlife.
Mm,
Um, so like, and they were busy with 5 kids for like our whole childhood. So like they were barely able to do it themselves, let alone like take
mm,
it super seriously. Um, so we got treated with a lot of lenience, I think, compared to anyone else in the religion. And
mm,
also we had like a really chill congregation, and like the leadership of the congregation is different in every group of people in every part of the world.
yeah.
Um, and there's like some roaming person they call a circuit overseer, like
Mm,
an overlord, who takes control of like 10 to 20 different congregations, and he's like there to like see how the leadership is handling their group of people,
hmm
50 to like 150 people depending on the building in the town, whatever. And at one point, everyone in this local church congregation were like taken out by ever changing person who roams around and making decisions. He does like a different church every week, basically, in that religion. And anyway, he wiped out the leadership and installed all new leaders from different near like hour away different congregations. And those group of guys were like way strict, way more by the book, and they were there to clean up the mess that this, according to the corporation, that this original group had created of leniency. So there was a point where it was like, whoa, this is not the religion I grew up around. What is happening? And they
Yeah.
didn't know what to do with me, because I was like in a punk band. I didn't have any Jehovah's Witness friends that were my age. I was only hanging out with like skateboarders and snowboarders and making music videos and documentary stuff in high school, and like causing mayhem, and yeah, like running a TV show with like normal high school kids of all different persuasions,
Yeah.
Pentecostal, Lutheran, Catholic, atheists, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It was great.
You were
They were,
not
they were
fit.
shocked. I was
Yeah.
like, they're like, you can't make a punk rock album. And I was like, 3 months later, I was like, hey, I made it. Here's a copy.
Enjoy. Oh,
Yeah.
we sort of laugh, but it's also not super fun to not fit the mold, right? Like in some ways,
Yeah.
it's hard to be that person who is seen as rebellious or like breaking away in whatever form. That also is often met with resistance and that sort of thing. So what was that like for you?
Yeah, there's a lot of social punishments that they hand
Yeah.
out. Like you're not allowed to hang out with people. And the leaders will encourage everyone else in the congregation to not spend time with people
Mm,
if they're breaking the rules or bending the rules or having a brazen attitude. Or I mean, I was self-indoctrinating with like punk rock at the same time, and
mm,
skateboarding culture, which like leans like real anarchist,
yeah.
and taking that seriously, because I felt like that was the guiding light, and that was honest.
Hmm.
Whereas like the religion was like always being fake and like trying to sell people immortality. All
Mm,
you have to pay with your soul, your whole life as a slave.
mm,
um and there's some aspect of like, you get these social rewards if you toe the line in the religion, and it's very public, and they make a scene about it. Like they announce you to everyone, they're now doing this responsibility, so you can now respect them more. And
mm.
if you and then they'll if you get demoted, they'll also announce that, like, this person's no longer serving as the literature counter attendant, or this person's no longer, moving the microphones around during our Q&A session. It's like, it's still a job. Like, I don't want to work more. I already have to do homework. Um,
Yeah.
but then people on the outside, all my like friends in high school in my hometown, they're like, who's this guy who's like, he's like in a cult and he never will go to your birthday? Like, he's missing all the important parties and like moments. And it's like, well, because he's in a cult. And it's like, well, so that my normal friends won't accept me because I'm in this weird religion. And I feel like I have to toe a line to like that identity, because I like have a gun to my head because Jesus will murder me if I don't obey. While in the church, they don't accept me because I'm not obedient enough. I'm like brazenly, you know, going to the after school hangout to play video games with my friends, or I'm having, I'm playing music with people that are unsavory characters that are slated for eternal genocide.
Yeah.
And you can't be hanging out with people like that. So like, I wasn't accepted in the church, and I wasn't really accepted in my normal friend groups. I'm like, joining shit sucks is what
Yeah.
I grew up with, that mentality. Go independent because no one will ever really,
Mm.
belonging doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's
And
still affecting me to this day, I think.
yeah, I think, I mean, well, belonging is just like one of the greatest human needs that often is the reason why we land in these communities in the first place.
Yeah.
But I think, you're sort of touching on something that I think a lot of people typically forget about, which is that isolation doesn't just come once you leave that community or you break away from that. I mean, what you're explaining is like a double whammy of isolation in both communities. I find that I notice it happens a lot as someone from the queer community. You didn't really fit in that community as well, but you were sort of like too churchy for the queer community and too queer for the church community. And it
Yeah.
was like finding that space is really tricky. And it's like you were like too punk for like the JWs, but too JW for like the punk community. And it's like,
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, it's like a double whammy of isolation where you're sort of like straddling this line and, to go either in either direction more heavily comes with ramifications of some kind. I mean, that's a lot for like even like emotional ramifications, but that's a lot for, anybody, let alone, a teenager or young person.
Yeah, and I think there's like this human path of, you're always constantly like checking where your identity lies, and it's not this one moment that you leave a church and you've been transformed by that. You're no longer identifying with that. Everyone still identifies you with the person who used to be a part of that thing,
Yeah.
if they knew you. And if you ever mention it, it's like, oh, you're one of those people that used to be a part of a thing. Like, oh my God.
Yes.
But at the same time, it's like, it wasn't just one moment
Mm,
where I'm like, I'm not going to do this. I've been skeptical since I was 6, and like I accepted some things and didn't, and less over time.
mm,
And no one would ever know that, because they just see a teenager in a suit that's just represents one thing.
yeah.
And yeah.
I'm curious about that skepticism. Like where did that come from and how did you work out so early that like this is all a load of bullshit?
Reminds me of a very first time I was asked to speak on the stage at church. It was by one of the church elders. He I shared the I placed the most fantasy sci-fi book, placed, this is a cult term, placed literature with somebody. Like, I got them to accept it. They probably threw it away immediately. It was my biology teacher. And I was like, so we're learning all this stuff about evolution. And I did the right thing. I told them that that was complete nonsense.
Mm,
And then instead of trying to give them the book that's like persuading someone who believes in evolution, that creation is what the true answer. And all the millions of scientists for 160 years are all duped by Satan. um, I gave him the Revelation book, which is like the Jehovah's Witness absurdist. Like, it's like 20 times more text. They like put a verse of the Bible from Revelation, some excerpt of a sentence or two, and
mm,
then like one or two or three pages about that thing, and like Jehovah's Witness interpretation with like crazy graphics and art,
mm,
about the end of the world, basically, and like weird, esoteric, abstract stuff. Um, locusts and rainbows and dragons and beasts
Mm.
and like a harlot riding a beast, all this like stuff that's it's just in the Revelation book, but it's insane. It's like all
Yeah.
crazy. I gave him that book, and the elder heard that story and he's like, "Would you like to tell it to the congregation in front of everybody?" And my response in front of him and my dad was, "Do you want me to lie?" And to like a gasp from both of them, like, "Why? What do you mean? Why would you ask that?" Like,
Yeah.
and I was like, "I don't know. Why did I ask that?" Because I think everyone's just lying
Mm.
actually all the time. Like, who cares about any of this? It doesn't even make any sense. And I was like 12 at that time, 13, something,
Yeah.
14, somewhere in that zone, like ninth grade biology, something like that. So like I feel like I was always just sort of like, when someone's authentic or
Mm.
like being true or honest. But I feel like that church or that culture of that religion is like, let's put on a face all the time
Mm.
and be fake to the point that you embody it,
Yeah.
and like you embody the ultimate drone, clone of the perfect church person represented in the magazines that they produce.
Mm.
And I was just like, I don't have any time for that. I hate that
Yeah.
so much. So I think it's just been an ongoing thing.
Mm.
And at some point I was like, I don't ever want to be associated with this group ever again. Like it took me, I was very much on that path. It just took me a really long time because I had pretty lenient parents and like pretty lenient like upbringing around it, that I was like, it's not that bad. There are a few people I like,
Mm.
and I do want to live forever. So let's just keep on taking the carrot, following the carrot around,
Yeah. I'm curious, like how that skepticism impacted your family life though, because like I can't imagine that like your dad would have been too impressed with like with that sort of like not just healthy level of skepticism and curiosity, but a downright like this is crap kind of mentality.
Hmm. Yeah. There's only a few times where we really talked about it on a deeper level.
Mm.
Um, because on some level I could confide in him.
Mm.
And in a way, my parents like really held like a lot of the nonsense at bay from our family and my siblings. Um, but yeah, I pushed a lot of buttons. I think, I think he would level with me a few times. And it's a weird thing about it. He grew up without any religion. So,
Mm.
or he believed in God, but he'd always read National Geographic. We like had just like a lifetime subscriptions. We had like a bookshelf as long as like a basement of like every year in order. And we would read all the articles and talk about it. He would always give me like political news and history. And we would watch like all the comedies from the 80s and 90s. And they were pretty lenient to rated R movies. Like the classics are fine, kind of thing. Plug your ears if there's a and your eyes, I guess, if there's a sex scene or something.
Yeah.
Um, but we're still definitely going to watch the movie. So, um, yeah, I don't know how to answer that really. He had me read. He told me his favorite book in the world in his life was 1984 by George Orwell. He wanted me to read it so we could talk about it,
Mm.
which is crazy because it's like that's the cult's playbook exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
They even like you can't say these words, special in-group language, and like they're editing their own literature whenever they change they call it new light, quote unquote, um, where something that they used to believe and everyone had to agree with,
Mm.
or you kicked out, they no longer believe, or they've altered it because it's like convenient for them.
Yeah.
And they never explain why. It's just now this is what you believe, so you better adapt or else.
Yeah.
Um, and like in Orwell, like they would this help one of the guys, the main character's job was to get the newspapers and then edit them, and they would reprint the newspaper and then put it back in the archive as like, oh yeah, we never said that. This is what we said.
Yeah.
They do that. They still do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think for people who don't know what the Watchtower is, can you describe what that is for people who don't really have any context?
Yeah. So Jehovah's Witnesses are considered a new religious movement, and that's like an 1800s term. And the charismatic leader that started it, he used to go to Seventh Day Adventist church when he was a teenager, I think, for a while. I don't remember exactly how long. And in the late 1870s, he started writing his own content with someone he met through that network of religious people in Pennsylvania. And then he moved to New York and sold his successful clothing business to start a printery. And he started printing his own literature through that magazine. And then eventually became his book series. that he published until he died, like 6 books. And that was under the publishing company, the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania, which is what they're still the corporation still called that. They just sold to the Kushners of Trump fame for $1 billion all their properties, and they have been building this property in upstate New York, like an hour or so in Paterson, New York, or Wallkill, one of those. I think it's Wallkill, just north of there, like an hour or two. And they do all the printing there, but there actually became like the internet wasn't, you weren't allowed to use it when I was growing up, which is hilarious because like it was just part of reality.
Yeah.
So they were really against that, and they were against social media. They banned it, and now they have their own website, and they've changed their like whole artwork and URL. They changed their whole brand and logo into a URL, jw.org. Don't go there.
Mm.
It's the dumbest information on the planet. They send everyone there, and now they can easily update whenever they want to change their literature and the history of their ideologies. You just like update the website instead of having to update and then print new books and sell the new books and tell everyone to burn or delete the old books or whatever, which they used to do. I got like 3 copies of the Revelation book because they changed their beliefs so many times. We had to keep getting a new book because it was all wrong. The true religion was wrong so many times. But yeah, Watchtower prints all the literature, and that is their main form of like money making because all the members, 8 million-ish members, who knows what the real number is, buy it. It's down donation basis, but they buy it. And then they have a real estate business. And it's all underneath this Watchtower Corporation. And now they're starting to do like commercial real estate. And they've been selling congregations whenever they need to fund like a litigation against them that they've lost. Or to pay hush money out to a victim of abuse of various kinds. So they've been selling. My home congregation got sold like 9 to 12 years ago, something. And so everyone has to travel like hours to like go to church now, but they needed the money. But now they're buying all this real estate in New York and other places to like fund their multi-billion-dollar operation. They're one of the richest companies in New York. They're like Scientology in that case, but they're more global, and they have more poor people, so they have to like scale the proselytizing to get more poor people to donate money. They coerce a lot of old members to give all of their estate to them rather than give it to their children as one of their like final scams.
Yeah, I mean, there is like a significant amount of financial exploitation. When did you realize all of that? Like, when did you start to notice? Were you out by that point that you started to notice all of that?
No, I met a friend in Minneapolis when I moved there, and the movie Witness Underground doesn't have me in it really. It chronicles a group of artists. But when I moved to Minneapolis in 2003, pretty quickly I met this guy who was also a witness, but he's on, like, we got along because we were kind of like, we're on the edge of it. And not to promote alcoholism, but we were drinking and hanging out and having a lot of fun. And we became good friends through this and traveled to Europe for a few months together and like ended up living together for a while. He's like, check out this website. And it was silentlambs.org, I believe. And that was by one of the writers from the writing department at Watchtower headquarters, the only woman who ever wrote for them. She was a Catholic, converted to Jehovah's Witness, and she like rose with her husband into the ranks at the headquarters and became the writer of the history of the religion and did all this research. And she's still going after it into her 80s. And she's a lovely woman named Barbara Anderson. But she had made this website back in 2002 because it's part of the writing group. They published an article about CSA. It's like abuse of children, basically, and about how it's wrong and how the Catholics are so evil for doing it, and like, you know, how bad it is for society. And they got thousands and thousands of personal letters of active Jehovah's Witness members saying that was such an upsetting article to read because the problem is rampant in their own congregation. And it came from many, many, many countries and many, many perspectives over the course of decades. And a lot of the people that were being, they had all reported and nothing had ever been done. So like these victims are facing their abuser every day for years because that's the only path to live forever. And so anyway, she got these flood of letters and ended up having to like quit being a Jehovah's Witness. And they made a website. I think she did it all on the sly for a while there because she wanted to leak as an insider. Anyway, she made this website. So my friend was like, holy shit, did you see this? And it was like, oh, I believe that. I've had multiple victims approach me as a safe space because they saw me as enough of a outsider somehow that they could trust me. And I felt, good about that, I guess, at the time, but I didn't know what to do with that information as a teenager.
Yeah.
And then, um, but so it's like, oh yeah, that's believable. What are we going to do about it? I have no idea. I'm barely in this religion. I don't know how to do it. I'm like, she's doing it. She's doing the work.
Mm.
And it's just like, oh, yeah, okay. It's not just my congregation or the neighboring ones that I heard rumors about and, whispers about from different people. It's actually a rampant systemic problem in this particular religion.
Yeah.
Um, so that was, you know, still a few years before I actually like finally cut ties.
Mm.
Yeah. So it's kind of an ongoing, like it's all the stuff just like stacks up. Someone
Yeah.
calls it like an analogy of like the bookshelf behind you. It's like
Mm.
more and more weight on the thing until it finally collapses. But like you're aware of all this stuff kind of or it's in the back of your mind. It's like building up and then it's just like I'm not, this is absurd. It's like
Yeah.
how many problems do I have to ignore before to to gain, personal salvation?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
this can't be the group that's gonna get it. They're horrible actually.
Yeah. I mean, I'm wondering, like you sort of just said that like you're hearing these stories of harm that's being done and you're hearing them as a teenager. What is what does like teenage Scott do with that? Like what did you do with that, hearing it?
We can't trust anybody. Like
Yeah.
that person can trust it in me because they need to offload this idea. They need someone else to know.
Yeah.
But like I don't know I don't know the perpetrator.
Yeah.
They may have not. I don't think they revealed who it was to me at the time.
Mm.
Like they're keeping the identity of that person secret because the perpetrator knows that this victim's the only one who knows. So if
Mm.
it leaks out anyway, then they would know exactly who said it, right? So they're trying to protect themselves, but they need to tell someone that this is happening.
Mm.
And then it's like, well, fuck, now I know that that thing's happening,
Yeah.
but who is it? It's like a great mystery to figure out. Um, and I think I would just like my big outlet, and I think that's the subtext of the Witness Underground film is like all of our outlet was playing music,
Mm.
and we weren't particularly singing about. We were not definitely not singing about God or faith or Christianity or this religion. It was
Yeah.
like secular music because we needed to like have a break from the topic and
Mm.
sing about relationships or like what's going on in our lives or like questions or like abstract ideas or like I was reading books on physics and like trying to figure out the nature of reality, um, totally outside of the religious stuff. So I feel like a lot of my outlets was just making art
Mm.
and not having a real purpose or meaning for it. Like, yeah, I want to be a rock star, some mythical, in my head, I'm a rock star
Yeah.
today. I'll play for 2 hours and like I'll feel better kind of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll make an album with my friends because I found a cool riff, like it wasn't too deep to be honest, but it probably was like a coding,
Mm.
like I don't know, I wasn't even like coding language, but like I definitely wasn't singing about that topic. It's like so heavy, you need to have a break from it.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I'm even like we know how constructive, how effective, how helpful creative expression is for like regulating our nervous system and processing stuff. So it's super unsurprising to me that even without lyrics or anything attached to the music, that even just the expression of music would have been a source of comfort and escapism almost
Yeah.
for you during that period of time. Um,
And I feel it just happens to be like the closest thing to the present moment you can get is the
yeah,
act of creating sound waves or other kinds of art because it like vibration is what is at the base of everything in our known reality. So
yeah,
if you're like making vibrations, you're just like playing with playing with the universe in a sense.
yeah,
Just so happens to be this profound thing.
yeah,
I feel like it's the center of everything that humans do
mm,
is like music's at the heart of it or
yeah,
art in general.
mm,
And I
yeah,
kind of wish society would organize themselves around that rather than like the growth of capital or
mm,
like money or yeah, I mean obviously we need to like there's like transactional stuff is not capitalism, but like I feel like capitalism as like let's get as much as we can for ourselves as like the center of society is like really corrosive.
mm,
And this is the point. Whereas like art, if you just made that the center of everything,
mm,
what could you do in society?
yeah, absolutely.
Idealism.
Yeah.
It's fun to think about.
Well, we've all got a dream, right?
Yeah.
Um, how old were you when you left the community and you sort of very like created that separation?
I made a pretty big separation at 19, but then eventually talked to my dad about it and
Mm-hmm.
my grandfather. And then with my dad and I had a like what I now see is like a pretty manipulative situation where I told him how I really felt and what where I was at and what I wanted, and he kind of disregarded all of it. Told me to go talk to the church leaders, and that if I would go knocking on doors preaching full time,
Mm.
he would give me half price rent, and I would save like $100 a
Oh,
month. Like I could have just gotten a full time job or a part time job and like not done any of that and actually like maintained my sense of self identity and sanity, but I took it on as an experiment to only speak to atheists and agnostics while
mm.
maintaining the punk band and disregarding any of the social pressures of the church. We like made all these agreements. I was like, I don't agree with this. He's like, doesn't matter. I don't agree with this. Doesn't matter. I don't believe this. That's not that important. I don't want to listen to these new church leaders. That don't. It's not that important. You don't need them at all. Like, in fact, forget that the congregation exists. Like, we had this like we like made a list of compromises, and then I was like, so I can live in the music studio, this extra house. This is like this funny like scenario of my life where I was like, okay, so if all of the things I just listed don't matter, and all you want me to do is talk to people, but I can decide on who I talk to,
Yeah.
and I only talk to atheists, what would that look like? So I did that for a few months, and like I learned a lot from atheists because I did that actually, and and also I talked to people like I did it alone. I didn't do it with like two by two, like knocking on doors.
Yeah.
I did it alone mostly. So I was like, I was asking people like, do you ever have like a transformative moment in your life that you can't explain? And like, I got these alien stories, I got abduction stories, I got demons, angels, God himself, beings from beyond the dead, and like all positive. And I was like, wow, it's really fascinating to hear other people talk about this, like
Mm.
these other realms that they think are real or they've experienced something about. Because all the Jehovah's Witnesses talk about is how scared they are of
Yeah.
the afterlife, how scared they are of angelic or demonic beings or God or Jesus. And like it's just a fear, 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 fear.
Mm.
This is the way that you die. This is the
Yeah.
way that you get corrupted by the evil spirits of the universe.
Mm.
So that was almost in a way it was like a healthy experiment. Like I don't trust any of this. I don't believe a lot of it, but let me lean in even deeper on
Yeah.
my own terms. So I did that for like another 8 years.
Oh my
It's
goodness.
way too long. I don't recommend any of that. That
Yeah.
fucked up a lot of my adult life, to be
I
honest.
expected you to say something like, I did that for like 6 months.
But in those 8 years, I did my own band. I
Mm.
joined my whole hometown band again. We made an album. We toured around. I made my own album with those guys backing my stuff. Recorded that, and then I invited Jehovah's Witnesses to be my backing band. And that was interesting because I didn't know any Jehovah's Witness artists really. So I found some, and I was like, "You guys want to play together?" And then we did a bunch of like summer graduation parties and stuff. And then I moved to Minneapolis, and I was like, oh, a whole city is so refreshing. I can decide who my friends are. I don't have to just deal with like these are the prescribed group of humans you're allowed to hang out with. So I
Yeah.
was like, okay, and this multi congregation super city for me at the time of Minneapolis. I was like, I can choose to hang out with only musicians, and holy shit, there's like 500 of them. That's a lot of humans. There's this
Hmm.
whole scene, and they're playing shows every weekend. And they've made like 14 albums, and like this is awesome. This is so fun. So I started dabbling with them and partying with them, and it was sort of like our college experience, analog, if you will, even though like witnesses aren't allowed to go to college. And then I also went to college and went to camera school, photography and digital media. I use film and digital. It's like a transition. And then I moved to Florida for a hot minute and like took pictures of alligators and on a canoe and like went real into the wild. And then I moved to Ecuador and I learned how to surf by infiltrating Jehovah's Witness surfers on the beach in Ecuador for half a year. Then I moved to live in Seattle and then I lived in Colorado. And then I left the religion. And then I traveled for 6 months with my then girlfriend, who also left the religion with me. So like those 8 years were like pretty full of like good experiences and like really interesting ones. I read a lot of books,
Yeah.
went
I
to a
mean,
lot of punk shows.
you said at the beginning of the episode that you moved around a lot. You were not kidding.
Yeah, that's just the beginning. And then after
Yeah.
those experiences, I like really took that seriously. I'm in my 8th year living abroad.
Yeah. Okay. So, like, if that 8 years was, you know, great and made wonderful connections, all of that sort of thing, what happened at the end of the 8 years for you to go, fuck this, I'm out completely?
Well, the very specific moment was me sitting, I was speaking Spanish by that point because I'd lived in Ecuador and
Mm.
then joined a Spanish congregation to keep religion interesting. It's like, well, if it's boring as hell, I might as well be doing the boring stuff in another language to keep my brain working.
Mm.
So I did that, and that was interesting. I was in a Spanish church congregation in Colorado, and some guy wasn't a bad guy, but he was, coerced to give a speech about homosexuality, and he just like leaned hard into like what's going to happen to these people who are sinning, this very specific group and a very specific way of sinning that is like more evil for some reason than any other sin in God's eyes. So how he's going to kill them and why they deserve it. And I was looking around the room like, I've had so many gay friends already as a Jehovah's Witness, which is pretty rare, but there's a lot actually, just like any other part of society, but they're having to keep it all a secret.
Yeah.
And some have confided in me how they felt about that, and then some have left religion for those reasons. And I was like, I can't believe like this is just a hate speech, like, and everyone here is like nodding along, like, oh my God, I'm in a cult. And I had kind of obviously known some of that, but I was just like, this is fucked. I have to. I can't handle this. And I just like got up, um, and I left. I was like, I'm never ever entering this building again. And I never did. I never went back to church again because of that.
Yeah.
But it was like there's already a lot of other stuff, going on that I had like deconstructed for those 8 years. I've been deconstructing since I was 6. The
Yes.
indoctrination and deconstruction were like constant ebb and flow, to be honest. But that was the ultimate final end.
Yeah.
And if you watch the movie, the main character, Ryan Sutter, he describes like his shocking like spiral of like understanding logical fallacies and critical thinking, where he like unwound some specific like thread he was pulling on. He unwound it, and it like crumbled the house of cards that is their worldview so profoundly. And in my real like ideological deconstruction wasn't a homophobic thing from that one moment. That was just like this is just wrong. This is like not humanist, as a church that like spins a pretty big story about how loving they are. It's like having an openly hate speech being a part of their dogma forever, and having it said like that. But my thing was more about like the history that they were also sharing about world, like global history. One of the specific ones in the movie we talk about is the Garden of Eden, Noah's Ark. How there is no evidence at all for that Gilgamesh biblical Noah's Ark, they're the same story, being like there's no evidence on the planet for that having happened the way it is written. And when it is written, it is supposed to have happened. It's like completely absurd. There's absolutely nothing that proves that. Anyway, so that was like the more logical thing. Is like, oh, they're lying straight up, and they're forcing us to believe this absurd allegory.
Was this the first time that you had started using the language of cult?
I didn't even start using that language for quite a long time, to be honest. And I think a lot of people go through these stages. Well, I never looked on the internet to find out what the internet said about this religion until like I was out of it for like at least 8 years. So way into my like mid 30s. And I was like, is people on the internet talking about this? Am I alone here? Like there has to be other people who left. Obviously I knew there were, but like did anyone write anything on the internet about it? Holy shit, there's so much since the 80s. Like the beginning of the internet was flooded with like pointing out like their lies, basically. There's then like a passing of the torch of like activism to help people unindoctrinate themselves through reading and videos. It's just constantly going, every generation of people.
I mean, usually at this point, I ask people what it was like for them to unravel all of that indoctrination now that they're out, except that you were unraveling it from like the age of 6. And so I'm curious what that was like for someone who was not necessarily as heavily wound up and having like a personal, intimate faith as well. So what did that look like for you?
I think it was about trying to figure out what's real.
Mm.
So I was seeking lots and lots of other sources that were outside of the religion. And one of those paths, like I was reading, like I was saying earlier about physics, like
Mm.
supersymmetry, string theory. I think there was one that was going for a while called the M theory. And then I started reading a witness friend, he bought me The End of Faith by Sam Harris, just because like you hate religion, like you're supposed to as a Jehovah's Witness. You should read this book. And that book was really confronting actually. But like I became like he actually his way of thinking and presenting information really helped me
Mm.
logically understand a lot of things. And then once we started opening up the can of worms of the new atheists, Sam Harris being one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse of the new atheists, I started reading Christopher Hitchens, God is Not Great, and then Richard Dawkins, who I actually was pretty upset about all of his presentations in the 80s and 90s because he was very vehemently against all religion.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, he's challenging my worldview from this Jehovah's Witness perspective. I ended up reading him, and he has an entire chapter dedicated in God, Religion to Jehovah's Witnesses about how stupid their book, Evolution or Creation, is. It's awesome. It's so good. I highly recommend all Jehovah's Witnesses read The God Delusion. And then I read a bunch of other stuff by him, and then recently Denon is the other one, I think. Can't remember, maybe I'm mispronouncing that. And then yeah, so that was happening while I was actively like in the music scene in Minneapolis and like hanging out with all those artists, and we were all trading those books around. And
Mm.
then, but I was like, well, that's not exactly like that's more on like, is God real or not? It's not so much confronting the religion and
Mm.
what their teachings are. It's not like I'm reading something from another religion. That felt more wrong. Um,
Mm.
but then at some point, I was like, I mean, it's kind of on the edge of that, right? Like disproving God's existence is kind of like a big deal if you're a church goer.
Mhm.
But then I was like, well, the church in their magazines are quoting all these authors. They're quoting these astronomers, biologists, astrophysicists, and philosophers
Mm.
in their magazine. So like if they and I was like, I'm gonna allow myself to read anyone that they are openly quoting.
Mm.
I don't want to just take their half sentence of a quote to prove their point and like leave it there and be like, wow, it's impressive. The astronomers on our side. Incredible. Because that's kind of what they want you to do. But I was like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna take that one step further and read their entire book that they're taking that one pulled quote from. And then I found out like, oh, they're actually really misquoting this person. That's like misinformation actually.
Yeah.
And I would actually ask the leaders giving talks about where they quote these people. And I'm like, oh, did you read that book? I would approach them after. Did you read the book, the person you quoted? Like, no, I'd read the Watchtower magazine, and that's it. I was like, pretty sure like what you said is not what the author would have wanted you to understand. Anyway,
Yeah.
so I feel like that's a thing that people should do is like give themselves the freedom to do research externally to the system of control that they feel like they can't get out of or whatever.
Mm.
Like go outside of that and read some other information.
Yeah. I'm curious, aside from, I guess, the typical sort of deconstructing theology and doctrine and beliefs and things like that, that you obviously did, once you were out and you were sort of reflecting back and you now had this language of like, I'm not the only person going through this, like I was in a cult. What was it like for you to look back and realize the ways that, despite the healthy level of skepticism, just being raised in a high control environment had on your sense of self and your identity and the way that you related to people and all of those things?
You're making me think of how my identity, how I shaped my identity and like how I let cult programming influence
Mm.
my interactions with people.
Yeah.
That's real embarrassing. I, what they want you to do is they're constantly indoctrinating you in these weekly church sessions
Yeah.
with if someone says this, you can reply with this, and that'll get the conversation started. Or if they give you a hook of like, oh, they went through a death in the family,
Mm.
or they went through a breakup, or they moved to a new location, like they're totally vulnerable. You should totally, teaching you basically to be a narcissistic manipulator
Yeah.
with their classic tactics. And I was doing it and like like, oh, I'm gonna try that out, see if that works. It's like basically like by trial and error, but with like a great guide for manipulation,
Mm.
testing manipulation out on unsuspecting victims who are probably like that's not, what the fuck, dude, like we're at a party right now, why are you changing the conversation for this, like, I don't care about your stupid religion.
Yeah.
Like, in there, whether they said that to me directly or just were thinking it, and be like, don't invite that guy. He sucks.
Yeah. We don't like
uh,
him.
for sure that was going on with like untold amounts of human beings.
Yeah.
But I didn't always do that. Is like, sometimes if I was feeling particularly self-righteous and was like wanting for some reason to embody that identity at that time,
Mm.
was in daylight or at a house party or something. Like, I probably didn't do that at the house party very much. I usually enjoyed myself, but it's really strange to be like code switching, identity switching constantly.
Mm.
um, I don't wish that upon anyone.
Yeah.
And it's also like, wait, like, why are you doing this?
Mm.
Looking back, like, why did I feel like I needed to ever represent that book publishing company for
Mm.
free after having to work for them as a slave?
Yeah.
Modern slavery, which is kind of how I'm starting to see what all that is now.
Mm.
Because like, they hook you, like they're not getting paid, they're a for-profit company getting
Mm.
free labor, and they're telling you you have to do it or you're going to get murdered.
Yeah.
Like, what else is that besides slavery? I'm just
Yeah.
pushing their stupid books and like website clicks.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Not a great look, and I don't like I don't like that I was ever a part of a thing like that. So
Mm.
it's like, it is embarrassing, but at the same time it's like, well, everyone is sort of representing something with some identity. Ideally it's like your own shit, but you're probably indoctrinated
Mm.
on some level about something.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things that I talk about, with people on the podcast, but also with my clients and for my own story, is that sometimes the most painful thing to do is look back and realize the ways that you upheld and perpetuated a harmful system as well. And that's a really tricky and painful thing to have to navigate, even once you are post that community, post church, whatever it is. Um, but you're right. Like when you think back to it, it feels embarrassing that you were ever a part of that. But you were a child and you were a teenager, and there are all of those ways. But I find that it's one of the more painful things that people have to navigate is, oh, like I was a part of that. I
Mm.
upheld that. I perpetuated that as well. Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious what impact did finally cutting the cord and leaving have on your relationships with your family and your dad in particular?
An ongoing string of disconnection that's lasted now 16 years.
Yeah.
And those witnesses are really extreme about disconnection. They call it, well, they have terms for why you can manipulate and mistreat your family, friends, and loved ones
Mm.
if they have their own ideas about reality, if they speak up about what they think is true, if they stop going to church and want to tell you why, etc. Or if you just break a rule and they let the leaders just punish you, and then they tell everyone why they that they punished you, so you have to obey them. Ultimately, it's you never talk to them again for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And they have one loophole, which is like for family business. But my family are real extreme, so they still haven't talked to me for 16 years. And they'd probably now say, well, it's because you were making videos about your feelings. It's like, I wasn't doing that until I was punished by you guys. The reason why it's a cult is because you do shunning.
Yeah.
And shunning is like, yeah, never communicating, putting up an emotional and communication wall.
Yeah.
It's basically solitary confinement like we do in prisons, but instead of a room, it's like a virtual room.
Mm.
It's kind of funny to say virtual room. Like a chat room. Like, you're not allowed to be in my space digitally,
Yeah.
or no phone calls.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like, we don't want you in our lives because we're afraid of you. Is the real thing.
Yeah.
And the church leaders and the church ideology, the system, has convinced them that if they communicate with their son, sibling, grandson, in the case of my family, um, that they could lose their chance at going to their paradise, which is they will be murdered by Jesus himself.
Yeah.
if they talk to me. They're totally afraid that I exist and that I have things to say about the thing that they believe in. I think they respect. I've have confronted a few of my family members like 6 years ago, and three different ones, including my parents and one sibling, all said the reason why they're afraid of me is specifically the topic that if they actually did the research that I suggested, which was, hey, read these three paragraphs on Wikipedia, I think that's how nature works. Was they're like, oh my God, you can't ever talk about that. Like they're
Mm.
like, if I read those three paragraphs, I know that I'll like lose my entire faith. So like that thing bothers them, and they're like, we respect you, like we think you're really smart, but we know that if we listen to you, we'll lose our whole community of friends, and we'll be mistreated by the rest of our family the way we've treated you, and we feel like shit about it. I was like, wow, okay, it's a lot of steps that you've
Yeah.
thought through of this already. You don't want me in your life. It's like that sucks, but it's like I understand that you're holding up this facade and it's really important to you.
Yeah. I
So
mean, like, I know that a significant portion of listeners and other people that I've had on the podcast have experienced some form of shunning or excommunication or something like that. How do you personally cope with that?
well, I can't change it. I've realized that it takes two people to have a relationship.
Mm.
So wanting a relationship with someone who specifically doesn't want one, it won't work. So like it's just like leaving yourself up for disappointment. If you want it, you like an expectation that's at a high level that like you'll never get there because the other person won't participate.
Yeah.
Um, so it's sad because it's sort of like I went through the stages of mourning, grief, um, to those relationships that don't exist anymore.
Mm.
I'm glad that they did exist at some point in the past. I can like find the good in that. But at the same time, it's like it's almost worse than death because they're choosing it, continuously choosing it. I'm
Yeah.
not choosing it. I'm just living my life. Just they're choosing to not be in it on purpose, and they keep on making the decision, and that sucks. Like almost more. Like death is like impersonal. It
Mm.
just happened, and you have to deal with the results of that finality. And they're like, no, no, no. I don't want you in my life today either.
Mm.
Fuck you
Yeah.
is a really shitty thing. Like they plan family reunions that I see because they post on social media openly. Like, look, our entire family got together, and I've never been invited to one of those.
Yeah.
And it's like but there were years where I was up until a point, and
Mm.
then they're like, we ignore that person's real.
Mm.
So like that's really shitty to see.
Yeah.
And to the point that like in the movie, we make a pretty big point about they're so fucked up and evil about it that
Mm.
like even when it comes to the loophole that their church makes, like official family business includes actual financial business
Mm.
or relationship stuff or death or marriages.
Mm.
And they have made sure that I'm not included in any of those things to the point that none of them would respond to my message with, I heard from some random stranger on the internet that our grandmothers died.
Mm.
Can you please confirm whether or not that's true? Like a yes or no question. No
Yeah.
response from a single one of those people in my family. I wrote to all of them. I had to find out from a second person who I didn't know existed on the internet also wrote me like to say their condolences or whatever. That was like a few weeks ago, so it's pretty raw. But
Yeah.
like the movie talks about that a lot through another person's story about how horrible they mistreat people, even in such a solemn and like a coming together type of occasion as a death in the family.
Mm.
They will use that opportunity to like basically throw mud in the face of anyone who like thinks that they deserve to know that it happened or deserves to be able to go to the wake or the funeral or to mourn without their bullshit layered on top of it.
Yeah.
They can't help themselves but like be angry that someone who disagrees with their beliefs about life and the afterlife or religion or God could even exist in their presence. Like they're so like they're despicable,
Yeah.
actually.
And it's this really fucked up reverse notion where you're not actually doing anything wrong. They're the ones doing all of the wrong things and doing like all of the mistreatment and the harm, but you're the one that is supposedly in the wrong. I feel like I've heard you talk maybe on another podcast about wanting to go to a sibling's wedding and not
Mm.
being allowed and that sort of thing. And yet, like you're just wanting to peacefully show up, celebrate an event for someone, But you're made out to be the villain. You're made out to be the
Mhm.
bad guy in the story, but you're not actually perpetuating any harm. And it's like this weird, I mean, it's obviously very strategic, but it's also weird and awful notion where like the villain is not actually the villain at all.
Yeah. I'm just like the long lost brother who's trying to show up for his family despite their hatred.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like I've had a couple people, like one person actually, one person, no, two people, two members of my family, one through marriage and one through blood, write me privately to say that I'm starting a hate group against Jehovah's Witnesses. And I'm like, I'm making a piece of art that very balanced talks about
Yeah.
how I have been put into their hate group and how they have been actively doing hatred towards me specifically, but like it's not me, it's like millions of people are going through this from this one specific reason or religion. And it's not the only religion like this, but
Mm.
like they're specifically trying to do Darvo,
Yeah.
which is deny, accuse, and then reverse victim offender roles.
Yeah.
And so like somehow I'm creating a hate group. I'm the one being mistreated by them, but they're so wrapped up in the twisted like rationalizations that they've been taught are the way to think about things because they were told how to do it by
Mm.
their leaders. Like they're the bad guys, like treat them poorly. We're persecution complex, that's what's going on. They have a persecution complex. Somehow my very existence or any words that I might say are
Mm.
attack on their fragile view of reality. And they're so afraid of me poking the pin into the balloon and having it explode
Mm.
that they have to then do horrible things to make sure I can't get the pin anywhere near their balloon, which is just like, have you read Wikipedia on that topic? Like you're just reading all this like self-reinforcing information. It's not research.
Yeah.
And like that's too much. Like, oh my God. I,
Mm.
I did what is it called? A confirmation bias. I
Confirmation.
try to figure out if the thing that my religion teaches is true by typing in exactly the way they said it into the internet. And I found out that
Mhm.
religion's right. It's like that's not research. Try to find out what the opposition says about the idea, or like any other different way of seeing it.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I mean, okay, so like you have this perspective where you are supposedly this person with immense power, which go you, right, to create this like,
nice way of saying
hate
it.
group against a whole denomination and religion. And yet you make the movie anyway, you do the documentary, knowing that it's going to cause more fallout with family and with other people. Why do it? Why was it so
Oh,
important to you?
well, after spending 8 years being treated that way, and I guess the thing is like I didn't make the movie to like get back at my family. I wanted to make the movie because it's so many people have been mistreated this way, but I've never seen a movie told from someone who went through it. Almost all the movies are looking in from the outside,
Yeah.
doing this thing that's really disgusting to me, actually. I think it's really manipulative and unfortunate that outsiders making movies about the topic often just point a finger like this religion, they're so strange and weird. Look at them. Let's take a closer look at how strange and weird they are. And here are some victims who got out. And look how strange and weird and now traumatized they are.
Yeah.
Ew.
Yeah.
Oh, we feel pity
That
for you.
sensationalist approach, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really gross. Like, yeah, I went through some of that. And so did all these other people that I know that also left the religion. They have like a 30% retention rate. It's like the lowest on earth. There's a ton of people, millions of people have left this religion and
Yeah.
suffer the same thing. And it's like getting out isn't the end of the problem, it's the beginning of the shunning, which
Yeah.
then lasts for the rest of your life. So it's like constantly being reminded that this
Mm.
thing happens. So yes, they're not wrong to roll credits with the person crying. But there's a life after. It's like all these incredible opportunities are now possible because
Mm.
you're no longer tethered to this ugly system of control and coercion. You can now do anything you want. It's an incredible amount of freedom.
Yeah.
And most of the people that I've met who've left religion, not all, but quite a lot, have gone and done incredible things with their lives. So like quite profoundly like successful or ambitious or inspiring, the
Yeah.
things that they've done because they don't have anything holding them back. There are no limitations anymore.
Mm.
And I think that's beautiful. And I want to show that
Mm.
because I feel that I've
Yeah.
done things I'm very proud of after that. But making the movie was really to share this story in this new positive lens,
Yeah.
saying, don't see people who got out of a cult as a sad, pitiful victim. See the people that are in the cult as the victim, who
Mm.
have not yet had the chance or the opportunity to learn how to unwind the control.
Mm.
Look at the people who left religion as people who successfully navigated cult mind control
Yeah.
as a leader in society, because they can see through the bullshit of like all these different layers. Like once you get out of it, it's like yeah, the onion layer. One layer peels back with it. Now you're in America. It's its own insane place with its own control systems and manipulation and propaganda
Yeah.
that are quite similar, to be honest. And then it's like, oh, well, these systems exist literally everywhere with people vying for power. Like being able to see that is a special skill set that a lot of people just don't have. There's like accept it because
Yeah.
that's normal, quote unquote. But when you've gone through something so extreme and like figured it out and then gotten out and then like made a whole new life, you can see through the bullshit. And I would appreciate if people like take a look at people who've gone through this. Yeah, are they traumatized? Sure, but like they've also transcended a lot of things that most people never have to go through.
Yeah.
And maybe we could use people that can understand, you know, in America, for it's a great example right now what's going on. There's
Mm.
always something going on, but right now it's really insane. um,
Yeah.
that like maybe this problem exists in your life too,
Mm.
and with people that you love also, and that you might have some disconnection through your family members and friends and community because of someone being manipulated by propaganda
Yeah.
or control in some way.
Yeah.
um,
I think that idea of there is life after was one of the few reasons why I started this podcast, which was that, like, yes, I wanted people to not feel like they were the only people going through whatever experience they were going through, that there was always going to be one or, 100 other people going through it alongside of them. But I also wanted people to be able to hear that there is good still, that there is life still, and that there is healing and hope and wholeness still. And yeah, that might come through a shit ton of work, but it's still possible, and it's still there still is the ability for that after leaving whatever group you have left.
yeah.
Which leads me to one of my favorite questions to ask that I ask most people, which is present day, what brings you joy and peace?
Hmm. Well, I found that I do really enjoy working on inventions
Mm.
as one thing. So I do electrical engineering design. I took a side path during the last economic recession, went back to school,
Hmm.
and I've worked on some pretty cool neuroscience projects, pushing tech to its furthest levels with latest physics.
Hmm.
That's been really cool. And some rocket design and spacecraft things, innovations, and I like that. But then on a more personal level, what I always come back to is filmmaking. I started doing that as a teenager in high school with our documentary project program. Then I
Yeah.
went to school again with that. And then this film, I used to play music. So like I got back into music when I went to Vietnam for 5 years. We didn't even talk about that. Made a movie there after 5 years of like focused work in documentary and music videos. I made a film called Hanoi Mixtape. And that was sort of like, I'm just having fun. I'm co-creating with all these other artists, and I'm enjoying it for the sake of doing it, but also then there's this beautiful thing that happens out of it. Like now there's a documentary that like capsulates a community and a time, and
Yeah.
it doesn't exist anymore. Like there's a lot of those people moved out of the country, and those bands don't exist, and people have kids, etc. Life goes on, and then I made this thing with Witness Underground that was like a deep look into this really important topic to me.
Mm.
And now I'm living in an art collective. That movie brought me to New Zealand to show the international premiere, and I've been living in this art collective, being introduced to like some of the top artists in the region. And each one of them, I'm asking because I don't want to rush into another documentary. I definitely don't want to make another film alone. Looking for a team of people, but it's definitely a slow process. But find myself shooting and playing with visual arts again,
Mm.
and that's when I'm doing that, I know I'm like in the right spot, kind of thing,
Mm.
because I'm like enjoying the process. And anyway, I've been asking all these artists like, what's a story worth telling?
Mm.
And usually, since they're artists, I'm like, what's a story worth telling when it comes to music and art in New Zealand? Because I'm in New Zealand at the moment,
Yeah.
and they've been giving me really great ideas that I would never have known if I just looking from the outside. So it was like deep,
Mm.
like kings of the underground, been going at it for 15, 20 years, and like they're so embedded and they know everybody. And I'm like, what's a story worth telling? They know what a story worth telling is, and that like having an outsider tell it could be important rather
Yeah.
than like self marketing thing, like it always feels a bit gross.
Yeah.
So like to have someone outside be like, oh, I recognize that that's legit cool. Like, let's talk about making it. We can interview you. You don't have to do self-promotion. Let's get a team behind this, get some funding behind it from the arts department. Like I'm like exploring these new ideas. I have like 6 different ones that we're kind of like I'm making poster art for and like putting together like a funding package. Like it feels good to like represent the thing I said I want at the beginning, which is like have art at the center of society. I feel like that's important.
Yeah.
But what don't just say like, oh, look at what this artist did with their life. It's like, so how does like, for example, how does like neurodivergence and electronic music, what is the base of that? Let's get some experts in on this. Like maybe a lot of artists are neurodivergent and maybe
Mm.
we need them to be the guidance for our society, the mirror to society.
Yeah.
And so like having these higher level, deeper conversations with some of the top artists has been really cool. And so I think I might develop, one or more of those, but try to give them all the best life they can have and pitch them all and see what ones shake out of funding and produce some movies for fun. But
No.
it's like, it also feels good, to make something
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, absolutely. And okay. So, I have two more questions. The first question is, where is your sense of spirituality and belief and religion now?
It's been changing a lot lately.
Mm.
So when I left the religion, like that day, I was saying when I walked out and never went back, I was like, fuck, I'm an atheist. Like all these cult members. This is really embarrassing. Can't believe I got here.
Hmm.
Like I woke up to that, but I was like, I know the path I took to get here, but holy shit.
Yeah.
um, so being an atheist was like, oh, it's a bit of an adjustment. I had to read a bunch of books. Like, what does that even mean exactly? Like, wait, I need to learn about like the history of what everyone else has been saying for hundreds of years about, the real course of history for like life on the planet
Yeah.
and the origin of it. Um, and it was really nice to have atheism, like materialist atheism, like only what can be studied is real. Let's stay there for a while. All spiritual conversations, gods, deities, angels, demons, um, afterlife, past lives, all that's complete bullshit.
Mm.
Like that's where I needed to be. And then it's like, okay, things that actually affect my life or seem worth exploring, I'm going to add those in on a case by case basis. And now I'm, 16 years later, from the day I walked out of that church to now, I've had a lot of psychedelic experiences that were pretty profound. It sort of went from like, okay, consciousness can't be explained by literally any science,
Yeah.
but we're all experiencing it, and we're probably not the only ones. And
Mm.
then like mushrooms were basically like showing me like everything that's alive is for sure conscious, maybe
Mm.
to different degrees or something. But like I don't know, but like I feel so connected. So
Yeah.
that was like the start. And then I listened to like Duncan Trussell, the comedian, this guy. He's like the
Oh.
most abstract human on. He's such a funny person, but he's always like bringing up esoteric topics in a way that's like really fun and playful and insane. I mean, he did Midnight Gospel with Netflix,
Right.
just to give some idea context. But he said something recently, well, like a few years ago probably, but it was like the rocks are conscious. Like the rocks are conscious. Come on, like the whole universe is made out of like void or rocks. Like there, you think that's conscious? That's insane. But then
Mm.
I've since had more experiences where I'm like, well, if we're really made out of dust
Mm.
and like all the material that makes up our body is made out of stuff that used to be a mountain
Mm.
mixed with water, then basically our ancestors are mountains. Like if our ancestors are mountains, then fuck, maybe they are conscious. We should talk to the mountain. For sure the trees are conscious. I'm definitely going to talk to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like I've definitely like taken a ride with what's real.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like everything's ultimately interconnected. Like the
Mm.
space between you and me is still stuff
Mm.
and molecules and electrons. And at the base of every atom is still vibrations. And
Yeah.
like they're all interacting and bumping into each other. And we're like transmitting audio sound waves through a digital device, crossing, like it's insane what all of this is, and it's all interconnected. So I feel like, what is my spirituality now? It's, well, I think a lot of things are, well, maybe everything anyone's ever thought might be real is probably real in some sense. um, when it comes to the esoteric and unexplainable and consciousness.
Yeah. Mm.
I believe telepathy is possible. I've experienced this. It's very strange. I've had an experience where I was remote viewing something in real time. Like, that was profound to me. Made me question my reality a little bit. So if like space isn't real, you can like actually be somewhere else. Your consciousness can be somewhere else detached from your body. Then, like, did I go through? Am I like? Is there an Einstein-Rosen bridge to that place, like a portal? Anyway, so I think about all this stuff constantly, and it's like there are no answers. I can't be conclusively like sure about anything, which I think is why it's more probable that that's real, because the thing I had to do as a Jehovah's Witness, and I hear Mormons always doing, is like, I know it's true. My confidence is the thing that you should understand is true. And therefore God's real. My God's real. This book is, I know it's real. It's like, that's the fact that you're so overly confident shows me that's probably complete bullshit. You should have to sell it that hard.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you're far more focused on the answer than the question, we've got an issue. That's
a great way to say it.
Yeah. Okay, I finish all of my episodes by wanting to give some encouragement, I guess, to listeners. So I am going to twist it a little bit in terms of what would you say to someone who has just left the Jehovah's Witness community? What would you say to them? They have no idea what they're doing. They've just left, been kicked out, whatever that situation is. But what would you say to them?
The hack that I've heard so many people say that worked really well for them is you've just been like punished, and you'll be continuously punished and reminded of who's punishing you if you stay in the same place.
Yeah.
So you can reverse the feeling of having the rug pulled out from underneath you with loss of innocence, family, connection, church, faith, God, by just relocating to like the next town over, or the next city or state or country. Might as well go wild if you're changing location and go to the most crazy place you can imagine, and then rebuild yourself there.
Yeah.
And people are awesome everywhere. Like, you've been taught to be afraid of people everywhere outside of your community, but people are literally awesome everywhere, and hospitable and kind and curious. So you can actually make a life literally anywhere, and none of it will be easy, but it will all be like a vastly improved situation than staying in your local area, really where you'll be reminded of all of the difficult things that you've grown up with and the past. And also those people knocking on your door, trying to manipulate you, or trying to get you to come back, to use their horrible language. Like, don't go back. Don't like crawl back and be punished and get sucked back into their gross situation of manipulation.
Yeah.
Forge your own life by changing your location, and do something that actually drives you and your curiosity.
I love that. I mean, relocating, I think, is one of the greatest forms of agency. So I love that. I think it's a great idea. It's also probably the most practical piece of encouragement and advice that anybody has given on this podcast. So I love that also. Thank you for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure for me too. Hope somebody got something out of that.
I'm sure they did. It was great. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Seth.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Beyond the Surface. I hope you found today's conversation as insightful and inspiring as I did. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others who might benefit from these stories. Stay connected with us on social media for updates and more content. I love connecting with all of you. Remember, no matter where you are in your journey, you're not alone. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep moving forward. Take care.